Hey guys, this is Linked Up 11 coming at you on YouTube, and I just wanted to make a series on chess proficiency because it's a game I really enjoy, and I have some friends who want to learn how to play, and I want them to enjoy it as well. So we're gonna start out very basic. We're gonna start out with how to play chess, and the objective, which is checkmate. Or there can be objectives such as I don't know, an outpost, controlling a weak square, opening a file, etc. But for the very, very basic player, we're going to go over how to move the pieces and how to checkmate. And we'll do that in the most basic of ways. We'll do that through the 4-move checkmate. Now, the program I'm on right now, it's called Fritz 10. It's an old program. It came out in 2006. It's very obsolete, but it gets the job done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, and I'm going to play a blitz game. And blitz is a short chess. It can be 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Blitz just means like fast, rapid. So, okay, I'm going to flip the board around. And I'm going to put the computer on infinite analysis so that the computer doesn't play against me because it's a master and I'm not yet a master. So throughout the series later on, I'm going to be reading from different books: Edel Niedzwiecz, My System, Jeremy Silman, Reassess Your Chess, The Most Instructive Games of Chess Ever Played, etc., etc. But for now, I'm just going to show you how to move the pieces. First, we're going to go over notation. Notation is the coordinates on the 64 square grid known as the chessboard. Now, it goes 8 by 8. And going vertically from where you're positioned is going to be a rank, and going horizontally is going to be a file. So, since white goes first, it'll always start with white being on the one side. So let me elaborate. It'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And going horizontally, it'll go by letters. And these letters for each one is called a file. So vertically is a rank, and horizontally is a file. It'll go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. So 1 to 8 and A to H. So right now, if I were to, and you can pause the video, if I were to tell you, show me E4 on the board, would you be able to do it? And you can take a second, pause it, and see if you can find E4. Did you find it? Okay, we're going to go over this. Baby steps. A, B, C, D, E. This is E1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you find it? This is a square. E4. And it's also the most commonly played move in chess, as you can see right here by the analysis. And this is the move, E4. Alright, so if you're looking to get, good coordination skills with the board, you should try and look for arbitrary squares. Try and find B6. You can pause the video. Did you find it? Now try and find F3, F6, D5, H6. If you can find these squares in a relatively short time, then you should be able to move on to the next step. And the next step is learning how to move the pieces. Now, if you've ever played chess, you already know how to move the pieces, but I'm still going to go over that. Alright? First, we're going to go with the pawns. The pawns actually aren't considered pieces. Ironically, they can become pieces, but they're not yet. And here's the thing, right? I'm just going to go over some example moves, not very good moves, but just to show you how to move the pieces. and the first one is the pawn. The pawn is a very special unit in that it only moves forward. It is something that can never move backwards. And because of that, it creates the skeleton, the structure of the game. So when you move a pawn forward, no, there's no going back. There's no moving it back. It cannot go back. A pawn may only move forward. But if you have not moved a pawn yet, as to say if one of your pawns is still here on the second rank, or for black on the 7th rank, then it may be moved twice. So to show you, e4, and that's the move, e4, the most commonly played move in chess. It's the very first move that starts out the game. After you've moved a pawn, though, like let's say I play something like h6. After you've moved the pawn, it can no longer move 2. Now it can only move 1. So it can't do this. It can only go up one more to e5. Okay, let's go back. So now that we have that, you're probably wondering, well, what if I didn't move the pawn 2 in the first move? Well, sorry to say, it cannot move 2 after that. So if you play a move like e3, let me put in a variation. If you play e3, then, and your opponent, let's say, plays f5, I don't know, some horrible move, then you can't play e5. You can only go as far as e4. Now, also, the reason why I say a pawn's a very special piece, you have to go over it along with all the others, but some are easier than others. And the pawn is one I realize people aren't very good at controlling, even though it has such a short range. And you may think, so if I move one pawn up twice, it can no longer move up twice, or none of my pawns can. Well, no. You move this pawn, so this pawn cannot move up twice, but all your other pawns still have that ability. So as long as you get that, it'll be fine. Now we're gonna go to the bishop. The bishop is it's a relatively easy piece to learn, and in some places it's called bellhops, rabbis, whatever you want to call it. But the bishop only moves diagonally, and I guess when you get into your chess career, you're going to take notice that both of your bishops start out on different colors, and they will never be on the same color, ever. There's never a time when you have two bishops that are on the same color. I mean, unless, but 99.99% of the time, you probably won't have two bishops on the same color. There is an exception, which I will go over later. Now, I actually haven't fully explained the pawn, just how it moves. I'm just trying to go over how it moves. So the bishop moves diagonally, meaning anything in this range, right here, right here, right here to c4, right here to b5, anything diagonally, it can go. And that will typically be something you want to do, is put your bishop on the best diagonal it has. Okay, so now you get that, you get a bishop goes diagonally, and that's pretty much a bishop. It's a simple piece, right? Now here's the knight. The knight, known as the spider, the octopus, whatever you want to call it, the horse, and it's a very special piece. It's a special piece because it's the only piece that jumps over other pieces. So if we were to start the game over, you could ask yourself, how many moves do you have at the beginning of a chess game? How many moves? You can pause. Did you find it? The number of moves that white can make, I apologize, at the beginning of a chess game is 20. It's 16 pawn moves, so you can either move each pawn once or twice, and so that's 2 pawn moves per pawn. That's 16, and 4 knight moves, because like I said, the knight jumps over pieces. So that can be a move. That can be your very first move, is to put your knight to f3, or your knight to h3, or your knight to a3, or your knight to c3. All of these, some are better than others. Alright, now you know how to move the pawn, you know how to move the bishop, you know how to move the knight. I'm going to go over how to move the rook, and I'm going to have to change the position because it's a bit trickier. So you have to put the king so you can make the position. Our rook is probably the easiest piece to learn. Why? Because a rook moves vertical as much as it wants without skipping over pieces. Only the knight can do that. And it moves horizontal. So very simply, it can move anywhere on this rank, the 5th rank, and it can move anywhere on this file, the D file. So right now, you can move it right here. And that's check, and we'll go over that later. So pretty simple so far. Reset. Okay. So now you know how to move the rook, the knight, the bishop, and the pawn. What's left? The queen and the king. The queen is a very special piece in that it moves exactly like a bishop and a rook combined. So if we were to put this right here, set up the board a little bit. This is your super piece. This is the piece that everybody adores because, I mean, it's the queen. Who wouldn't? We all love our women, right? Or, I mean, sometimes we love our kings, you know? I mean, that's the point of the game, right? Protect the guy. But that's what she does best. And she can move horizontal, just like the rook. She can move vertical, just like the rook. And she can move in diagonals, like the bishop. So for example, an arbitrary spot, queen right there. You see it moved on that diagonal like a bishop. The king moves because he's in check. Now the queen can move adjacent like a rook, horizontal. The king is still in check. He has to move. The queen can again move. I mean, at this point, I guess just adjacent again with a check. And now the queen moves diagonal once more with another check. And all this just goes to show that the queen has a very powerful range of influence. And that's because it moves like a bishop and a rook. Alright, so now that we went over how to move most of the pieces, right here, we'll go over how to move the king in this example. So the king, it moves, indigestion. The king moves almost like the queen, I would say. If the king, let's say, wants to move, it can only move one square. That's the stipulation. He can only move one square. However, it can move in any direction. So the king can move right here, or right here, or right here, etc., etc. The king can only move in one direction, or not in one direction, one space. It can move in any direction, one space at a time, making it a piece that, although people want to say has an infinite value, its actual attacking value is something along 4 points, meaning at the end of the game it can actually be a really good attacker. So we've run over how to move the pieces. Now we're gonna go into this very special unit that Ellie went over before, the pawn. And the pawn's really special because even though it only moves forward, it can only capture diagonally. Every other piece, the way it moves is how it captures. So if I move this knight to f3, and then this pawn to e5, just in the way the knight moves, it can take this pawn. The same with the bishop, the rook, the queen, and the king. However, this pawn is special because it doesn't capture in front of it. So if I were to play e5, it can't take this pawn. It just can't. But if I were to play d5, voila, magic, it can take it. And that's the only way it can capture, is diagonally. It can never capture forward, which also brings into the question blockading, etc., etc. So something like this, yes, if it's diagonal, white can take, or black, whoever has the pawn in the move, can take. So if I play something like f5, yes, white can take. Okay? So, now that you understand that, we're going to go over two very special moves. And the two special moves are en passant and castling. And en passant will go something like this. I'm going to give you a very basic example because if you see this in your game, most times people will bank on you not knowing it, but it's actually a very special move, right? So we're going to go, I'm going to play a garbage move, like h6, something, I mean, not garbage, actually. Grandmasters have played it, but a move that at an amateur level probably isn't very good. And let's say white plays a funny move, like e5. And the computer is giving it a bad rating because, yeah, these are bad moves. But this is all for instructional purposes. And now, let's say white plays e5, and black says, well, if I play this pawn to d5 right now, then white will be unable to take it because his pawn will be on e4 to take diagonally. So he plays it. However, white may still take the piece, or the unit, the pawn. A pawn is not a piece. I apologize. Doing this. En passant, we'll go over that one more time. You see? White has his pawn sort of in black's territory on black's side, and black pushes his pawn too. And now white takes the pawn. That is en passant. And I hope you can appreciate it as a very useful move when there's not much else that you have. So let's say, let's go back. There's times when you can't do it. That's the only stipulation. This is the only time you can do it. Is not this. The only time you can do it is, let's say, again, I messed up. Say h6, right? This new variation. And e5, and then black moves his pawn. Like, please pay attention. He moves his pawn up 2, and now you can take. So that's impossible to do. Like, let's say black moves it up 1, and then you think, forget it, and play knight f3. I don't really understand the thought process, but you play knight f3, and then he plays d5. Well, now you cannot take it. The only time you may use en passant is when something along these lines. And when black decides he's trying to get by, he's trying to be sneaky and move the pawn up too. Trying to be slick, and then you can take it. And then you can take back, and just more variations, right? Endless variations. Now you understand that, you understand en passant. Going to go over 2 more concepts before the end of this game. At the end of this video. Again, I apologize. I'm sort of tongue-tied, woke up. It's still sunny out. I'm a bit of a vamp. So, e4, e5. This will be the new main line. And what I'm going to show you now is called castling. And pay very close attention to the white king and the white rook. Tell me if they move before I do this. So, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. This is just a demonstration of the powers of the pieces. And that the knight has now moved out. It provides some influence. He moves his knight out, and the bishop comes to b5 to attack the knight. How the pieces are in somewhat of a coordination, although I can't really explain that to someone who doesn't really understand. So, oh, I'm sorry, 3 more concepts. I still have to show you checkmate. So, this comes out, it attacks the knight. The knight defends the pawn, this knight attacks the pawn. So if you were to take right here, let's say something like this, and then he takes back, let's say, the b pawn. Now you won a pawn. The pawn is somewhat free at this point. Not exactly, but that's the basic point. Alright, so let's say, yeah, he plays a6, and you don't take. Let's say you don't take. You move this back, which is actually the main line, because if you take, I'll show you. If, let's say, he plays a6 and you take, then d takes, and if you take this pawn right here, he has this really nice move, queen d4, and now you realize your knight and your pawn are both undefended. Nothing defends them, so one of them has to go. I mean, unless you found a way for the knight to protect the pawn, or the pawn to protect the knight, which isn't going to happen if you pay attention. So the knight will move back, and the queen gets the pawn. Alright, but that actually wasn't what I was trying to show you. I was trying to show you castling. So knight f6, this is the main line of the Ruy Lopez, the Spanish opening. And white has this little, nice move. Oh, I apologize. I think I didn't let them castle right here. So white can now castle. And I'm gonna do this a few times just to get it in my head. And what white is doing is white is moving his king over 2 spaces, and his rook becomes adjacent to the king. So basically, it was made to protect the king. You do it to protect the king. You don't want the king in the center. Think about all this action in the center. All these pieces coming blasting down. Let's say you got some rooks right here. You got some bishops, and your king is just stuck in the center. Well, the game would be sort of bogus if you just had to keep your king right here and watch as he got mercilessly onslaughted by the pieces. So this move was made to protect the king. The king gets out of the way of danger. The center now becomes, more open to attack, and the game goes on. And there are some stipulations with this rule as well, because it's a special move. And the stipulation is 2. 1, the king cannot move. If the king moves at any point in the game, if the king has already moved, then you cannot castle. Or if the rook has already moved, at any point of the game, you cannot castle. Now, I'm going to show you queenside castling because, again, people forget these things, and you got to sort of remind them. Just take everything off, Alright, and everybody can castle. So this is kingside castling, and this is queenside castling. If you notice, the king actually did the exact same thing. It only moved over 2 squares. and the rook went adjacent. The same as if it was going kingside, 1, 2 squares. And for white, it's pretty much the exact same, 1, 2 squares. And on this side, 2 squares. Okay, now finally, since you understand castling, you understand how the pieces move, you understand how pawns capture, we're going to go over how pawns become more than pawns. I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. Pawns, think of chess sort of like life, right? How people love to make these analogies over how pawns are they're the weakest pieces. They're not even pieces, but how they're so weak and manipulated, etc., etc. Pawns have the most potential, and I'll show you how. With this is about to be a pretty hilarious example, almost comical to someone who plays chess. All right, e4, knight f6. This is Alekhines defense. e5. Let's say we're playing against someone really bad, right? And he doesn't even acknowledge the threat. He plays b6. You take f6. And say, I don't know, just a random variation, right? Bishop a6. F, take g7. Let's say again, he ignores the threat, like this is not here. And he takes your bishop. Well, now you have something really amazing, a transformation. And it's G, take H8. And now if you see this as promotion, right? Looks like the pawn got a new job, right? Just got promoted. And you can turn it into any one of these pieces. So I'm going to say a queen. And now, look at the analysis. Your one pawn who at the beginning of the game had literally, let's go over it, had 0.16 of an advantage, now gives you a 17-point advantage. That's game winning. The game is, in computer standards, I guess it's over. The game is over. Not really, but it'll be shortly. And that goes to show when a pawn gets to the end of the board on your opponent's side. And this is, I guess you could think of as sort of like checkers for you checkers players out there. I mean, Bobby Fischer did love checkers. That when it gets to this point, it can become anything it wants. It transforms. It can literally be the strongest piece on the board, your pawn. That's not to say you just go out in the beginning of the game just pushing pawns, trying to, get a queen immediately because if someone plays correctly, well, now you sort of just messed yourself up. But that just goes to show that a pawn can become something much more than a pawn. If we were to start over one more time, I'm going to show you the final concept, checkmate. In checkmate, it's a really beautiful thing when it happens. So checkmate, I'm just going to give you the breakdown, is when the king is in check and has nowhere to go. Now, check is another funny thing. Check is when the king, like let's say, oh wait, it's black to move, sorry. Alright, let's say the king is in a position where he can be taken, because that's the point of the game, is to put the king in checkmate. So let's say something like e4, e5, bishop c4, knight c6, right? Now the bishop can put the king in check right now. Bishop take, f7. Now the bishop is threatening, next move, that the king can be terminated. In an actual game of chess, you can't lose the king. But for the purpose of this tutorial, let's say, right? So the king is in check. This is check. So the king takes. Now let's say the knight moves out, and then, oh no, something like h6. The knight can put the king in check now through either knight take e5 or knight g5. So let's say knight take e5. Now the knight is threatening the very next move to capture or terminate the king, which again it may never do. So now you take. And now let's say no, that's a this is for instruction. Let's say the queen goes right here to check. Alright? Now the king is once again threatened that the queen will take on f7 next move. Let's check. So now the knight goes out of its way right here. It gets in the way of the check. Now the king's no longer in check. Next move, the queen can't take it. She can take the knight, but the king just takes. Alright, so if you've learned through that example, what I want you to see is these three things, right? Right here, when the bishop took, it was a very direct check. It was very close. So the king could really only do two things. It could move right here. It could move out of the way, or it could capture the piece. It could move, or it could capture. It could move, or it could capture. Okay? Now, when the knight came out, he played h6. The knight took on e5. The king could only move, or it could capture. It could move, or it could capture. You see what I'm getting at here? And then finally, when the queen went right here, and with this check on h5, the king couldn't capture. The king couldn't capture at all. So he could move. He could move to one of these squares, or he could put something in the way, block with the knight. So he moves, or he blocks. He moves, I keep messing up. He moves, or he blocks. And right now the computer puts it almost 4 points in black's favor, and he blocks. So now you understand that there are three ways to get out of checkmate, or check, and you can pause the video and ask yourself what are the three ways, but I'm going to tell you right now. Do you know them? You can move, you can take, so the king's right here, you can take, or you can block. You can move, you can capture the piece, that's checking, or you can block. You can move, capture, or block. Those are the only three ways to get out of check. So now that we've done that, I'm going to show you checkmate, where you can do none of those three things. So reset. And this is the 4-move checkmate that I mentioned earlier, I believe. And that's e4, e5, bishop c4. Let's say black's a real amateur, and plays a6. And queen f3, sure. And now black thinks, this bishop, I don't really understand this mindset, but b5. I'm gonna take this bishop here, because this bishop, it makes me mad. It makes me mad that it's there. And the queen says, no. Checkmate. And that's the end of the game.
Checkmate.
And if you wonder why it's the end of the game, can't the king just take? No, the king cannot just take, because then the very next move, it would still be getting taken. That's the thing. Checkmate is not capturing the king. It's putting it in a position where it will still get captured the very next move. No matter what happens, it will still get captured the very next move. So let's say magically the king could take, which it can't. The computer won't even allow me. The Computer won't even let me. The bishop would take. And if the king randomly moves somewhere, again, the queen would take. So whatever happens, the very next move for white, the king can be captured. That is checkmate. Alright, so we're going to go over that one more time. That was the 4-move checkmate. And that's e4, e5, bishop c4. Whatever move black does, really. He can play knight c6, he can play h6, whatever. We're going to say he plays a6. And let's say white does something different, right? White plays queen h5. And let's say black thinks, I want to attack that queen. I'm going to take that queen. He plays knight f6. Well, no. The queen still checkmates.
Checkmate.
Alright, so now you understand that, I'm sure. You understand the concept of checkmate. Here's a nice little checkmate for those people who want to impress their friends. And it's going to be my final example in this video. And it'll go... And this is a checkmate that black will execute. So just pay attention. f3. The main line. f3. e6. g4. Queen h4. Checkmate. And you're probably thinking, how? How is that checkmate? Well, where can the king go? Can the king move? No, it just moves further into check. Can the king put a piece in the way? This knight can't do it. This knight can only go to f3, h3. Or, e2. The bishop still can't do it. Nothing stops it. And can he take the queen? No, he can't. And since all 3 of those, that criteria has been met, black is in checkmate. Or white is in checkmate. I'm so sorry. White is in checkmate. And that is a 2-move checkmate, if you pay attention. 1 move for white, 1 move for black. 2 moves for white, 2 moves for black. And white is in checkmate. White has been ousted. And that's pretty much it. That's the brunt of the video. That's everything I can show you. You now learn how to play chess, how to checkmate, how to get out of checkmate, how the pawn moves, how the rook moves, how the knight moves, how the bishop moves, and how the queen moves. You learn the coordinates on the chessboard. And that should be enough to start out a chess career. And I really hope you liked this video. If you liked it, please, upvote it. Subscribe to my other videos. Some of them won't be so chess-based. Roll snare drums. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for your time, and have a nice one. Until next time.